Anyone who has ever had an agent or a manager understands the feelings of frustration when we feel like we're not progressing in our career fast enough or getting the roles that we want or getting the type of money that we think we deserve or that our work is valued at. We have all been there. I have been there. I have felt that frustration. And it's so easy that when we have representation, our first thought is to go, well, why isn't my agent submitting me for this? Or why is my agent not getting me all these auditions or getting me in these rooms or negotiating this and that for me? Very easy to do that. But what I want to talk about today is how we can build a better relationship with our agents in a more collaborative fashion in order to move our career forward in the direction that we want and start to see some of those results that we expected when we first signed up with our agent. And before we get started, I'm just going to tell you who I am. My name's Andrea. I am a performer with 20 plus years as 20 plus years experience as a singer in the live gig entertainment industry. Theater industry, commercial industry, and I've also done some voiceover jobs here and there. And I also am a professional coach for performers. I do full service coaching from technical preparation to performance preparation to how to build better relationships with industry professionals and also work through things like rejection, performance anxiety, building confidence, and dealing with rejection. So if you are someone who appreciates conversations around those topics, I encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to my channel because that's all we talk about here is everything to do with performing. And go ahead and like if you find this video helpful or if you want to see more conversations around this subject. And I always like to encourage people to engage with your own thoughts, your own perspectives. What kind of things have worked for you around this topic, or what strategies have you implemented that have given you great results, so that we can learn from each other. And also just, ask your questions. What are your thoughts on this whole discussion? Like, what do you feel like you're confused about or you're stuck about, or what are you misunderstanding? Feel free to drop that in the comments so that we can clarify some of these topics and also help each other. Okay, so now moving on to the topic. I have totally been there before where I have sensed myself getting frustrated because my expectations weren't being met in my career, and noticing myself going, well, what is my agent doing? Like, why isn't this coming through with my agent? And I have talked to so many performers who have had this same experience. A lot of my clients, a lot of my colleagues will start to talk about, like, I feel like I'm not getting enough submissions from my agents or enough auditions, or if I, get a call back or move through the casting process, I feel like I'm not getting feedback on why I'm not moving forward in the process. So I just wanted to talk about the top 5 things that I find myself repeating over and over in these conversations. And then give you a little bit of like how I have learned to approach this conversation with my own agents. I'm repped in Legit, one of my agents, and I also have 2 commercial agents. And these strategies have worked so well to just build to build more a healthier and also collaborative relationship with my agents, and to make me feel like we're a part of the same team, and to make me feel heard, and also to make me feel like I have agency in my career. So let's jump right in with the mindset that will help you implement these strategies. So oftentimes in these conversations, I find that what is missing are 3 ways of thinking. And the first is that agents are just human, period. They're not superhuman. They're not just a cog in the wheel of, our career progression. They are human beings. So they have, their own thoughts, their own opinions, their own perspectives, their own vantage point of what's going on in the industry, from which they are making these decisions in terms of like moving your career forward and getting you opportunities. They also are people who make mistakes, or people who, they have misunderstandings, or they forget to do things, or they get busy. So I find that reminding ourselves that these are just people. They're not special, superhuman, like alien machines. They're just human like us. And reminding ourselves to give them the grace that we would like to receive. Oftentimes I have to remind myself that, I make mistakes all the time. I misunderstand people all the time. Like I'm on the spectrum. So this is definitely like an MO thing for me. It happens all the time. So if I were in that position, I would want someone else to give me grace as well as, being forgetful, ADHD brain. I'm always forgetful. Things fall through the cracks with me, um, and reminding myself that like this person is doing the best that they can with what they have. Um, and also like there are things that impact the way that our agents or managers make decisions around our career that we're not always seeing. So just giving them the grace that they're doing their best, they're showing up for us in the best way that they know how. Which brings me to the second way of thinking that really, really helps to support these strategies is that your agent is on your team. Like their entire business, the whole point of their business is to support their clients in getting what they want, to help their clients move forward in their careers, to help their clients book more, to help their clients make money, because they do not make money unless we make money. There's literally no point in them trying to prevent you from being successful. It literally hurts them for you not be successful. So they're never working against you, or at least never on purpose. So I think that we remind ourselves that like that it's only in their best interest to support us and to help us win. It helps us to remember that the best approach is always to be collaborative and always to assume the best intent from our agents. The other thing to remember is that there are so many things happening in the world, in the industry, in the economy that influence the results that we can make in our career. It's not just on our agent. Our agents aren't all knowing, they aren't all powerful. They can't just force you into a show or force you into a gig and force the conversation around negotiation so that you make the absolute most money you can. That's not how it works. So if we can remember that, there's so many things outside of our control, one, and also because our agents are human, there's so many things outside of their control that they cannot just force to happen in your career. So we need to, give them that grace and understanding that they're doing the best that they can with the power that they have. And that's literally all that they can do. And I'm just going to check a note because I made a shorter post earlier that kind of tackles some of these topics. And I want to make sure that I'm hitting them the way that I did in the post because I thought it was so helpful. Okay. And then the other mindset thing that I find super, super helpful is that they are only a part of our team, right? They are not the CEO of our business. They can only do so much. An agent's job or a manager's job is to provide opportunity. Or if you're, working with a full service manager, their job is to direct the overall vision of your career, but they can only do that one piece. They can't force relationships with casting agents. They can't force directors to see you. They can't force your talent and your skill to be on par with the industry. They can't force you to fit into trends of the industry. So they can only do one specific thing. And when we remember that, our careers are not their responsibility. It's not even possible for them to take full responsibility. And when I walk through this conversation with myself, I remind myself that actually my career is my responsibility, right? My career is not their career. My goals are not their goals. They have so many other clients that they're supporting. So I have to take full responsibility for my own career. And the beautiful thing about that is when I remind myself that, I remember that I actually have a lot more agency than I thought. And there are lots of things that even if I didn't have an agent, I could be doing to move my career forward. When my agent, before I signed up for to work with my legit agent, I was getting my own callbacks. I was getting my own auditions. I was making it to finals of Broadway shows without even having an agent. So reminding yourself that you actually have the power to do things, even if your agent, has to be sick for a few weeks or a few months and they can't do any work. You have the power to move your career forward. And then the final mindset piece that helps you to implement some of these strategies is I think I already actually said all of the top ones, but in general, just remembering your agent is human. Your agent is not all powerful. There's so many things outside of all of our control that affect the industry, and that ultimately you are fully responsible for your career. Um, Now, what are these larger strategies that help us to, reach our goals in a more efficient and collaborative way with our agents? So, overall, the strategies fall into three categories: being very, very direct and clear with your communication. Many actors think they are being direct and clear. And usually, when I'm working with a client and we dig deep into some of these things, or a really close friend and we dig deep into some of these things, what's happening is like they're kind of beating around the bush. They're kind of like talking around the expectation they have, or talking around the goals that they have, or what they would like their agent to be doing, and not actually saying the thing. So get curious around your conversations with your agent. Are you actually saying the thing, or are you avoiding it because you don't want to come off as needy, or come off as rude, or come off as being selfish? Or what is it that's stopping you from saying, I want to be in the show? Rather than going, you aren't really submitting me, and hey, like, like actually say the thing. The second thing to remember is that you want to approach it from the view that you are taking charge of your career, rather than putting it all on your agent. A lot of times, because agents are human, it can feel a little jarring when someone's coming at you and going, hey, you're not doing this, or hey, other people are getting this, what's going on, right? It can feel jarring for people to come at you with that energy. And of course, because an agent is human, they might get a little defensive, they might get a little guarded, they might, a lot of people, when they get approached that way, if they're not like set into their fight flight, they can get into like a shutdown mode where they feel like they don't know how to respond to you. So remember, they're human. Approach it from more of how can you take charge, how can you show up and be responsible, and then make sure that you are approaching it from the perspective of you're just trying to clear up any misunderstandings, any gaps in communication or perspective that you guys have. Okay, so with all that being said, here are the top 5 things that I find myself talking about over and over and over with clients and colleagues, and how I would approach the situation. And I'm going to give a very specific way I would have this conversation. Like, what would I say in this situation? So one thing that comes up for a lot of people is getting submitted for what they view as the wrong role, or not getting submitted for the role that they think they fit best in a show. And how I would approach this is, first of all, acknowledging that they are submitting me for a role in the show, and then asking for their perspective, and then sharing my perspective. So how I might say this is, hey, I noticed you submitted me for this particular role, and I really appreciate that because I would love to be in the show. I would love to hear your thoughts and just kind of see what you think makes me a good fit for this role. And see where your mind is, where your perspective is. I always thought that I'd be right for this other role in this show, and these are my reasons. I feel super connected to how this character approaches life, or I feel super connected to how this character interacts with other people, or I feel like my voice suits this better if you're in musical theater. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Are there any things that I'm missing in regards to how I relate to these particular roles? What are you seeing in terms of trends that make you think I would be a good fit for this rather than that? And why this is so effective is that it gets the responsibility off your agent to be able to solve all your problems. It gives you agency. It makes your agent feel like you're, being more collaborative and more supportive of them to be able to support you in your career. And it also gets you guys both out of, being defensive of your side of the perspective, and gets you guys to focus on the solution to the problem. And you're going to find that that's a trend in all of these strategies that I usually implement with working with my agent. Is the whole goal is to get you off of opposing sides and to get you on the same side, clarify the viewpoint so that you can both move forward and solve whatever the perceived issue is, or whatever the issue is. The second one that I notice is getting submitted for what we perceive as the wrong show, or not getting auditions for the right show that we think we would be a good fit for. So how I might approach this is saying, hey, I noticed you submitted me for this one show over here, and I think that is so awesome. I'm so honored that you think my skills or talents would bring value to this show. I would love to hear your thoughts and, see what makes you think that my experience or my talent would be a good fit or a value add to this, I always thought that I was more suited to shows like blank, 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 because these are the values that I see in myself, or these are the talents that I have, or this is my skill set. What are your thoughts on that? Are you seeing that I are you noticing that like I'm not seeing any trends in the industry, or kind of the same thing as what I said before? Like, what trends am I missing, or is there anything that I misunderstanding about how these roles are usually cast? What is it that you know that you might need from me in order to show that I might be a good fit for this other role or for this other show? Uh, the third thing that I notice are people getting frustrated about not getting enough submissions or auditions. Um, and the first thing that I want to say to preface this right away is to remind you that oftentimes auditions and submissions are out of our agent's control. How they even get to be able to submit you is through requests a lot of times. So especially if it comes from commercial agents, theatrical agents, voiceover agents, a lot of times they are getting requests before they submit you for anything. So there are agents who for sure have the power to pitch you to certain things, but that all depends on their relationship and their rapport with casting agents or directors. Otherwise, they don't even get to decide, if they can submit for certain shows. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that they are submitting from their whole roster. So it's not just about whether you would be a perfect fit for the show, but it's who on the whole roster would be the most perfect fit to be able to fulfill the needs of the creative team or the casting director. So that's something really important to keep in mind, that it's not really just about you and what would you feel like you would be a good fit for, but what would actually be a good fit for the show. What's being requested of our agents and managers, and which of their clientele would be best suited for that, so that they are actually fulfilling the needs of, the casting team and the creative team. So here's how I would approach that conversation. Hey, I noticed that I got this many submissions or auditions this quarter or this year, and I would love to hear, which trends you're noticing in the industry that might be affecting that. You can even bring up, hey, last year around this time, I was noticing I was getting this a number of submissions or auditions, and I just noticed there's a difference, and I just want to, be informed on what's going on that might be affecting that. Then I would take responsibility. Here's what I noticed that could be contributing to it. Here's what's going on in the world, or, what's going on in the economy. I just want to make sure that I'm, on the same page here. And also, here are some things that I'm noticing in my own work and in my own, approach to my career that could possibly be impacting this. Here are some strategies that I thought to implement on my end to offset those things. And also, here are some things that I want to increase. I want to try to increase my chances. Here are trainings that I'm taking. Here are classes that I'm taking. Here are skills that I'm building. Here are people that I'm connecting with. And I would love to hear your thoughts on all of these things. Do any of these things seem like they're kind of irrelevant, or do any of these things seem like they would be effective? Are there anything that I'm missing or not noticing in my own work that could be helpful? What do you see, or what do you need from me that could make it easier for you to pitch me to these certain kinds of shows or roles? So all of that, when I'm saying all these things, I am making sure that I'm doing it from the perspective of, I want to clear up any miscommunication, any gaps in understandings. I want to make sure I'm doing what I can to move things forward. I want to make sure that I'm up to date on trends, and make sure that I am supporting you to be able to represent me and to submit me in all of these things. And you'll notice is that if you keep that mindset, your agent is going to be a lot more open, a lot more curious about what's going on in your career and what's going on in the industry. And a lot of times what my agent will do is he'll be like, you know what, I haven't thought of that. Or, you know what, let me actually take a look at these things, or let me give some more thought to this, or let me actually go through and, do an audit of your tapes so I can see if, I see anything. Whereas if I would approach it from the other direction of like, hey, you're not getting these auditions, I promise you that that he would not have that same perspective. He wouldn't have that same perspective because he wouldn't have been asked the questions that made him curious about it. In fact, instead he would have been, like justifying or defending. Okay, and then the fourth thing is around this topic of getting feedback. Like, let's say you've been in for a show a certain number of times, or you've been, you've been getting lots and lots of um, auditions for the same type of role, like lots of guest entertainer roles, and not a lot of series regulars roles, and you're wondering like what's preventing that thing from happening. Here's how I would approach that conversation. Hey, I'm feeling so great that I've been getting auditions for things like this and getting callbacks for these kinds of shows. Thank you so much for like getting me in the room, and you've been working so hard. I appreciate all of your support. One thing I noticed is that this particular show or this particular team has been calling me in a lot, and I haven't been progressing in the casting process like I thought I would. And I know it can be tricky to get feedback from directly from the team, but I was also wondering if you noticed any trends in my work that could be improved, or if there are any trends in the people you see getting farther in the casting process that I could potentially learn from. Here's what I'm currently working on in my auditions, and here's what I'm currently doing in terms of training and education that I'm prioritizing to increase my odds. Do you notice that any of these things usually yield better results? What are your thoughts on these ideas? Are any of these things like kind of not worth it, or am I missing somewhere that I could, be improving? Every single time I have this conversation with my agents, and I have this conversation a lot. Every single time my agent offers something helpful, like, hey, yeah, actually, it would be great if you had more materials that reflected this kind of role, or it would be great if you worked on that particular skill, or hey, actually, let me go through and look at your tapes and see if I see a trend. Or, you know what, I didn't really think about that, but you're right. This is a trend that's happening in the industry when it comes to casting this type of role or this type of show. So this approach is extremely effective for you to make sure that you're getting the feedback that you need, right? Because the point is not to blame your agent for getting feedback. That doesn't even help you in any way. The point is to actually get the feedback. So how can you approach the conversation in the way that you can get that information that would be helpful for you? And then the final thing that I notice come up a lot of times with performers and representation is this idea of negotiating a contract to be able to get your needs met on the contract, or to be able to get what you think is fair. Again, we're not approaching this from the perspective of your agent is doing it the wrong way, or even that the creative team or the casting team is doing it the wrong way. We're trying to make sure that we're communicating our needs effectively so that we don't feel pressure to accept things that are outside of what we think is just or what we think is appropriate. And here's how I have been approaching the conversation with my agent. Hey, I so appreciate you making these requests on my behalf. Here's some other things that are important to me. These specific items over here are deal breakers for me. These specific items are things that I really feel are important, that I would be willing to compromise on, but they're still, they're so important to me that I want to make sure that we're having this conversation around them. I'm okay to walk away from the contract or this deal if we can't budge on these certain items, or if we can't compromise on these certain items. For the other items here, here's how I'm willing to compromise that I can already see. What are your thoughts on all of these? Are these fair asks? Please let me know your suggestions or workarounds for some of these priorities that I haven't thought of, just in case, because I'd really love to be able to collaborate on this project. One thing to think about, this is me talking to you. One thing to think about is when you're asking for, suggestions or workarounds, make sure that you're incorporating this idea that, you really are trying to make this deal work, and that there may be things that you have missed. So, hey, is there anything that you're seeing that like this is a deal breaker for me, but maybe there is a workaround and I just haven't really thought of it, and there's something that I could be doing to make sure that this need is met. Please let me know if I'm missing something. And this is something that even when I'm not negotiating with my representation or through my representation, I think about when I'm negotiating contracts. All the time I'm thinking about, I would love to collaborate on this project. These are deal breakers, but here's how I'm willing to make this particular thing, this particular need met if the team can't make that need met. So I'm thinking about all this stuff ahead of time so that I can be the most collaborative with casting teams or creative teams when I'm negotiating contracts on my own anyway. So this is something that you can take even outside of working with your agents. Okay, so those are the top 5 things that I find I'm like repetitively talking about over and over and over with other performers. And I would love to hear from you if these things have been helpful, like if you have learned something or developed some insight around how you can have these conversations and communicate better and collaborate better. And I would also love to hear if there's something else that I haven't talked about that seems to come up a lot for you when working with your agents. And just share in the comments, like, this particular thing keeps coming up. I didn't see you talk about this. How would you approach this? And that will give other actors or performers or singers a chance to reply to your comments with what works for them in general. All right, that's all I have for today. Please like, subscribe, and comment so that I can keep supporting you with this information. And if you're finding that this was so helpful for you, you want to go deeper in to how you can have better relationships with your agents and your managers and the teams that you're working with. I coach performers. I'm a full service coach for performers, working on things like technique, communication, relationships, and just in general, how to move forward in your career and be emotionally healthy and, have the most sustainable career that you possibly can. Feel free to reach out to me. You can always reach me on Instagram at TheAndreality, or you can reach out to me by email, FlemingAndreaD@gmail.com. Feel free to hop on a call with me. All of my consults are completely complimentary, just so that we can talk through some of these things. And maybe if you feel like we would be a good fit to work together as coach and client, we can talk about that as well. All right, I will see you another time.